Aljo and Suga Sean, I don't remember a fight just like this, guys. I can't remember it. If it's happened, you want to correct me, go ahead. I don't remember it. Where you got a championship fight with two rising stars that both have media outlets. And the hardest thing about getting to that star thing I talked about, the hardest thing of getting to that title fight that I just mentioned, the hardest thing getting to a main event is understanding the media. Both of these guys have programs. One of the reasons I submit for you that Sean was able to do everything so quickly, and Sean is damn near record time. You go back to Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor knocks somebody out on an undercard, grabs a microphone and yells 50 G's, baby. I didn't think that was all that hot, by the way. And I'm kind of a mark for Conor, kind of like his stuff. I didn't think that was that hot, but boy, the rest of the world did. I mean, that thing caught right on. It comes to his next fight. I know about it. I happen to be on that same card. They gave Conor a favorable match against a 20-year-old kid named Max Holloway. Turned out to be one hell of a hard evening. So that's Conor's second fight. But his third fight and all the rest were main events. And he only did 2 to 3 of those before it was world title time. So I bring that to you because Sean's rise is very arguably the fastest in the sport. Now, I just laid out for you the fastest in the sport. But Sean's is very arguably, sure it is. I mean, not only to pay-per-view, not only to championship, not only to main event, Sean like that was on main cards. That's a big deal. Sean had a placement on a card one time. He was third from the top. The former world champion was third of the night. World champion was third match of the night in front of an empty. You know why they hold those matches? They'll never tell you this. They'll never tell you that because it's rude. They hold those matches to make sure their lights and their cameras are in the right spot, that it looks good before we go live to the world. They'll never admit what I just told you. That's why they hold those fights. The world champion was the third one of the night. The world champion was in a fight to make sure that the lights and camera were in the right spot. And Sean O'Malley fought 4 hours later that same night. I'm just saying that's a star. That's a rising star, and that's how quickly he did it. He had a massive opportunity through the Ultimate Fighter. He had something happen that I believe involved marijuana, but it had something to happen with Snoop Dogg way back then. But he also had media, his own. And when you talk about rising stars, Sterling has been a proven, quantifiable talent. His skills, his ranking, his acceptance, his respect shown by the community has been up there for a long time. Sure it is. Yeah, but as a star, it's brand new. You gotta understand, the night before his last fight, which was Henry Cejudo, so that's a Saturday night, the night before, Jon Anik is in his hotel room, and Jon Anik is going over his notes, getting the show sheets ready, and it dawns on him. He didn't know it. He comes across this fact, and he tweets it out to the world. This was Sterling's first main event. And Jon couldn't believe it. Go, wait a minute, a guy who ranked this high, a guy with this good a record, a guy touted and looked at as fondly, the guy with the wins has never main evented. He main events the very next night. And Sterling himself, Sterling himself was very open to saying, I don't know how business was. That night, before they ever left the arena, they rebooked him in a main event in the prized city of Boston. So I'm just sharing with you, whatever those numbers or whatever those projections were, the night that Sterling got done, They rebooked him. He only fought 3 weeks ago. I apologize. It'll be 3 months. He's not fighting until August. 3 months prior to the night that he'll be in there with Suga Sean, and the match I'm talking about was his last fight. Israel Adesanya had been sitting out begging for a match. He still doesn't have one. I'm just putting perspective for you. Islam Makhachev is still sitting out, doesn't have a match. They booked Sterling that night. So now there's no longer a question of are his numbers up. There's no longer a question in that. We have the proof. That's the answer, just so you know. Now, Sterling started talking about Sean, and this is where it comes back to the very opening line I told you in this diatribe, which is that they both have meaty arms. And Sterling, I always find to be very fair. I don't ever see Aljo bury somebody for the point of getting headlines. I don't ever see that. I see that he will tell truths. And I feel like he was doing that with Sean, at least within his own mind. Because here's what he said about Sean. You got to understand, Sean is questioning, Sterling is questioning Sean as a number 1 contender. And that's a very comparable phrase each time you do it. Back when I started in this sport, any division, if you won 3 fights in a row, you were fighting for the title. As soon as you get a guy, and he go, oh, he won, and he's an undercard, you don't really know who he is. Oh, that was 3 in a row. Oh, okay, put him in a main event for the title. Like, that was the thing. And even if it wasn't a perfect science that happened every time, it was a thing. Jason Lambert, friend of mine, and total stud, but he had those 3 fights. He had those 3 wins in a row. They were going to get him in there with Chuck Liddell, who was the biggest star in the sport at that time, and Lambert was kind of just getting his feet wet. He was very good, but as far as being in front of you folks, and I just bring Jason in because it's an example that I know of. But this is the way that it used to be. So I look at Sean, I think, yes, of course he's the number 1 contender. Of course he's the right guy. And not even for all the guys he's beaten up, for all the guys that I know behind, and I've kept my mouth shut, for all the guys I know behind the scenes that ducked him, that refused to fight him, that found reasons to not compete with Sean, that elevates him and that moves him forward. And then you got the business with Peter Yan, who's a straight up badass. I think that he is the number 1 contender. But O'Malley made a point, and it was reasonable. And this is his perspective, okay? So when I say I'm talking about a comparison, look at what Aljo went through. Aljo's road would very arguably have been a little bit more tenuous to a title fight. So I think he's speaking from that perspective. Here's what he says, though. You guys tell me if you think this is fair. Aljo speaking. Dana White Contender Series. O'Malley gets a beautiful knockout. He gets hyped up. Has some okay fights. Start knocking out guys that are no longer in the UFC. Now, I understand that comment better than most would. He's talking about Sean's record and Sean's win. He's saying, yeah, he knocked guys out. He did this great job. And those guys aren't even here anymore. I know. I get his point. I even if it's a personal, I'm going to give him that one. Guys that are no longer in the UFC. You get this guy who kind of comes in, has these tailor-made fights that were handpicked for him to look like a superstar. And in all fairness, I'm not even mad at all that. All right. O'Malley diatribes into something else. He comes back, and I want you guys to hear this. This is how he finishes up. He says, what I'm annoyed with. Okay, now this is the open and honest Aljo. This is what I really like about him when he's doing from this perspective. Because I find Sean to be very refreshingly honest too. Now Sean will put some spin on there. Sean will put some entertainment on there. Sean will put a little flavor on it. But he always tells you how he's feeling. I really do feel that. And here's Aljo's standpoint. He says, guys, I'm more annoyed with the fact that he has an opportunity to really stake his claim and declare to the division, hey guys, this is who I am. I'm here. Instead, he goes out and he fights Cheeto, gets kicked once, falls over, gets punched one time, and his lights get shut off. gets knocked out by Cheeto, somehow moves up and ends up fighting Pedro Edwards Scissorhand. And then it says his eyeball. I'm sorry, I don't know. I think it's like a typo. Maybe you guys will know what that means. Ends up fighting Peter Yan. So Aljo's laying out the case. I mean, this is very simple, right? Like, this isn't really risque and dirty stuff, but he's laying out the case for why I don't think this guy's the number one contender. Not only do I believe I'm the champion, I can look down and see this belt, and I can tell you the hard path that I had to get here. Not only do I believe that I am the true champion, but I think I can beat this guy. And here's the reasons I think I can beat him. And it sounds to me as though Aljo sat down with his team, got out his notepad and a pen, just like every single fighter does, and started watching some Sean O'Malley fights. And it sounds like the one thing that was in common is Sean O'Malley beating people up. And that's a really hard day. When you get that pen ready, you got your coach right here, you're taking these notepads, and you maybe got your glasses on like Uncle Chael does, you're watching this thing. And the one constant you see is a dude that you're about to get locked in there with. And the only thing he's doing is whipping ass. One time after the next after the next. It's one of these tough spots. So I feel as though Aljo's dealing with that. Aljo's acknowledging, yeah, he looks good, but he's looking good over guys that were lesser competition than me. I feel as though he's getting his confidence up. And he's doing that right in front of us and letting us watch it. I just think it's a really interesting observation because as much as some of you think that Aljo is a finished product, a world champion. He's always got the beautiful girl. He's always got the cool outfit. He's making a bunch of money. As much as you think he's a finished product, as cool as you think he is, he doesn't. It is the number one secret to his success. He reads what they say about him, but Aljo has never believed it. And if he ever does, this all comes to a screeching halt. Your approach is so important. Aljo approaches this as though he's the dog. The first thing that came out of his mouth when they told him he was going to come to Boston to fight Sean O'Malley, the first thing out of his mouth was, Sean will be really popular in Boston. I bet I'll be the underdog. He created that. But he also told you where he needs to be. And he's got a humility about him. And he's got a hard test in front of him. He's getting his mind right. It's very interesting to watch.